begin. Okay, Alison, if you want to start the recording. Yeah, okay, so we're recording. We can start now.
Okay. Well, good morning. My name is Roger Boone. I'm the chair of Conwy Sacre. I can confirm that the committee officers conducted a sound check before the end of the start of the meeting. So I'm presuming everybody can hear me. The meeting will be recorded and will be available for viewing through the council's website after the meeting. Can I just remind you that translation facilities are available and to choose your language of choice if you haven't done so far. If you wish to speak, please use the raise hand function. You can use the chat facility, but please know that I might not be able to monitor the chat facility during the course of the meeting. All microphones will be muted. If you've indicated your intention to speak, you'll be invited to turn your microphone on. If you leave your device for any reason, can you please ensure you're muted and you turn your video off? I think that's mainly so we're not getting background noise and so forth coming on. A reminder that when we come to voting, I'll be taking votes in separate blocks by raised hands. I'll take the teacher reps, hopefully at the end of the meeting, as we explained, councillor reps, and then the religious reps. And it's absolutely crucial for this meeting that you do have the management plan, which we have produced, which relates to the action plan to hand. We'll be going through that in detail. Right, Sally, any apologies for absence?
Yeah, apologies received from Councillor Chris Cater, Ariane Pierce, Nicholas Richter and Ian Gerrard.
Thank you. Just to remind that you must declare the nature of any personal interests at the beginning of this meeting. I don't think there are. But no? No, there aren't. Okay, well, the first matter is to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 30th of November. Both Phil and I are very happy with them, gone through them. Is there a proposal that we accept those minutes? Thanks, Mary. Seconder, Hugh, thank you very much. Okay, all those, now we'll have to defer the approval now. I think, right, Sally, yes, to the end of the meeting?
I think for minutes, I think we're okay for the minutes. If we just do a show of hands, a collective show of hands for the minutes, we'll be fine.
Okay, all those in favour?
Yeah, that's great, thank you.
Unanimous, thank you. Okay, Phil had a meeting, I think, in December the 21st with Lowry regarding the distribution of the Conwy Sacre annual report, plus a number of other matters. So this is your opportunity, Phil, to feedback on that.
Okay, so I met with Lowry and we discussed the things that came up in the previous agenda. We talked about the newsletter and where it would be hosted. We talked about the annual report and where that could be hosted as well. We talked about the possibility of a questionnaire that would go out to schools and when that could go out to schools. We've obviously come up with the questions, but the timing is very important at the moment. I think with schools currently being inundated with COVID-related issues, the sending out of a questionnaire would be very inappropriate. And so actually the timing of that will take a steer from the school improvement team. We have received 3 logins, so thank you for those of you that sent me your request for a hub login. We had already noted that a lot of governors can have access to hub as a governor, but as a sort of a faith representative on Sacre, it's very unlikely that you would have a hub login unless you were a governor within a school. And so the county agreed that we could arrange that through the local authority, and I have 3 of those to pass out, and I'll do that at the end of the meeting. So if there are any other faith representatives that would like a hub login, the benefits of the hub login mean that you can get access to sort of the RE resources that are on Hub. We have a network across North Wales, although we have a few South Walians on that network as well. And I upload things like the Conwy Agreed Syllabus, and various other guidance material. It's a very useful place for schools to be able to get that sort of information. We talked about a teacher working group that we mentioned in the previous meeting and that will be discussed in the action plan. Morning, Larry. In the previous meeting, and what that could look like and how that would be funded. And the local authority has agreed for 3 half days for to release possibly around 10 teachers to become part of a religious education working group within Conwy, which is very, very positive. I met with the team, the school improvement team, to discuss how we would see those particular actions realised, including the newsletter and the annual report. We've got an area on the Conwy Education website, and also sort of access to the questionnaire will probably be done through Hub, using the online Office 365 version of forms. I don't know what it's called, but there's an online questionnaire resource that we will utilize for that. But we are waiting, and as I said, we'll wait for the steer from the local authority on when we'll send out that questionnaire, because of I suppose the COVID related issues that schools are dealing with. That's it, Roger. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Phil. Before we ask for any questions, big welcome to Julie to her first meeting. I've wanted to put a face to that name for a long time. We're both joint users of Clanrose High School. We both show films there.
Hi, Roger. Thank you. And sorry, it just seems to have clashed when we've had meetings before. So it's good to be here and to see you all. So thank you.
Okay. Well, warm welcome. Hi, Larry. The next matter arising is the meeting I had with Lowry regarding the the action plan. That took place in February, 1st of February the 3rd. I don't want to report on that at this stage. You've actually had a report of that meeting circulated to you already, but it provides a natural introduction to our consideration of the management plan of the action plan when we get to it. So I'd like to defer that to that particular point. It seems most sensible, but I would at this point just like to record propose a vote of thanks from both Phil and I on your behalf to Lowry for the really supportive way that she has dealt with us bringing forward the action plan to the local authority. And you will probably recognise that obviously from the detailed management plan that is now on the agenda. So I'd just like that to be recorded if possible, please. Okay, the joint letter we were supposed to write regarding the publication of the supporting framework for religion, values and ethics, and we do have movements at last in this area. Phil, over to you.
Thank you, Roger. The supporting framework, we've been waiting on it for quite a while. There was a WASACRE meeting at the beginning of the week, and I know Tanya and Colette were both in attendance to that meeting. So the supporting framework has been quite a substantial topic of conversation within the RE world in the last year or so. We've been waiting for the supporting framework. It's got a different name to it now, and I can't quite remember the name. It's sort of on the tip of my tongue, but not quite. And it will be the document that is sort of will steer or become the substantive amount of our agreed syllabus. And Welsh Government would hope that the supporting framework will be accepted as an agreed syllabus for all of the 22 local authorities moving forward. So it's a document that's very, very, very important. We were going to write, as a result of the last meeting, Larry and myself, to Welsh Government to ask really where was it, or where is it, and would they be releasing it anytime soon? we found out at the sort of end of last week that the directors have received that document in draft. They have, so the 22 directors across Wales, sorry, they've received the supporting framework, and they have got an opportunity to respond. I don't think it's a long window. I think it's sort of just after the Easter break. So they will have an initial response, and then Welsh Government will open the framework to consultation, public consultation in May, and it will be open for 8 weeks. Now, if that's at the beginning of May, it'll obviously close at the end of June. If it's mid-May, it'll close mid-July. But that's an opportunity that we will need to go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and make our recommendations or make our concerns known, if there are any concerns, that is, and then sort of feedback that to Welsh Government. If you think that the new curriculum will be statutory and the agreed syllabus will come in online in 2022 in September, that only gives us 4 terms between now and when the new curriculum is statutory. And so we have to sort of conduct what's called an agreed syllabus conference. It's the statutory duty, one of the main statutory duties of a SACRE, and we will have to have conducted that and signed off our agreed syllabus in time for schools to receive it, to acknowledge it, to work through it, and to implement it and put it into their own planning. So if we were to release it in the summer term, that only gives the school, well, no time to be able to implement and plan that agreed syllabus. So once we have agreed, or once it has been published, there is a real need for us as a SACRE to conduct the agreed syllabus conference. In light of our teachers, really, we need to give them as long as possible to digest what the agreed syllabus requires of them in terms of teaching, learning and planning in their classrooms. So we haven't been, well, we didn't need to send the letter in the end because the supporting framework has been released, and we will get to see it in May, and Larry will have an opportunity to respond between now and I think they've got sort of a 3 or 4 week window. Is that right, Larry? Do you want to add anything?
Larry?
Bear with me, Roger. My mute button's at the corner. No, nothing to add. But of course, we will be responding, and I'd be interested to see as well, Phil, what the regional response is. So I'll raise this as well at our GWE Management Board, just to remind them of the importance of responding to this.
Yeah. What was the feeling among the Association of Directors with regard to the delay? Because it has an enormous impact on the school's ability to adopt, to adopt the framework easily.
Mm-hmm. You know, if I can be quite frank, I think we're quite used to delays, Roger, and I think over the past year we've had to work within those margins. So frustration. However, we're hoping now that once the feedback's in, we can progress with it.
Okay, thank you. Right, well, that actually takes us through 5D at the same time of matters arising. The Curriculum Assessment Wales Bill. What is the exact progress now? That was it. Julie, you probably will know this better than anybody. Was it actually discussed or agreed in Senate in the last week?
I don't actually know, Roger. I haven't had the update. Laurie and I are together tomorrow for our update on things. So
it's actually Roger, it's the ALN bill, the additional learning needs bill that's gone through Senedd very recently, and we've just been notified of that last night. So I haven't yet had an opportunity to circulate that. But at the moment, in terms of the curriculum for Wales, I've got no further updates on that. Have you, Phil, in terms of RE?
I presumed it had gone through.
I did,
Yeah, and I thought it had gone through very recently as well.
this
So
week, wasn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
there are no amendments. All of the legislation stands, and so the curriculum for Wales law has been passed. Obviously, it becomes statutory in September 2022, but I think it's run its course as it needs to through the legal system.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that update, Phil.
Thanks.
Well, there has been a consultation process, but my impression is certainly that the governments have actually decided to proceed irrespective of what the views were expressed in the consultation with regards to that. I think that's fair to say, isn't it, Phil? Yeah. Okay, because I mean, there have been a number of contentious matters in that bill. Some of them aren't within our remit because they actually relate to the whole area of personal relationships and so forth. But I know that I've been bombarded by a number of people recently asking me what we're going to be doing about this and so forth in terms of lobbying. But it seems to me that the procedure has been initiated by the government, and that's where they're going, irrespective on those issues. Okay, the Black Lives Matter resources, Phil, over to you.
Okay. RE today made available a lot of BAME resources as a result of discussions that happened earlier on in the year. Those resources are available on what they call the NATRE website. So I've sent a link, I've put the link on my hub sort of network, and also we've sent out a link. There is the issue that they're not translated, they are only available in English. We have a couple of resources that have been translated and they'll be sent out because I've only received them relatively recently, but it will be one of those. I think once we have a teacher network, hopefully if we have a teacher network agreed as a result of this meeting, then we should be able to, or hopefully be able to, sort of maybe collate some of the resources that are created in-house within Conwy and share some of the resources that are created more locally.
Yeah, the implementation of our management plan is actually going to make issues like this a lot easier to deal with, hopefully. So looking forward, not only this issue, I think other issues which affect what goes on in the classroom will be dealt with a lot more easily. With regards to progress of the AGRED qualification, perhaps for those who are new, Phil, perhaps you could just explain what that's about before you report on it.
Okay, my colleague in Wrexham has, along with a number of other teachers, and I think this is in response to the concerns that the GCSE, the reform of the GCSE a few years ago, put it out of reach of some pupils. The short course that is a statutory duty, or that meets the statutory duty of RE at Key Stage 4, was always quite accessible for all pupils, and it was a way of all schools being able to meet their statutory requirements whilst providing pupils with a qualification. Unfortunately, a lot of teachers reported, and we're well aware of this from reports we've had from teachers previously, that the reform made the GCSEs possibly out of the reach of some, and schools then didn't offer it as a short course. The change in measures as well, and the way that schools were judged meant that they weren't offering short courses and were offering full courses instead, possibly in short course time, so they weren't providing enough time to deliver the full course. And so a few teachers and my colleague Libby went to, or approached, an examination awarding body called AGRED and asked them if they would be prepared to look into the creation of a formal qualification to meet the requirements of almost like the old short course, but definitely meet the requirements of the statutory religious education at Key Stage 4. And they were met very positively with that request, and they've been working at it's not a formal sort of GCSE is one type, and I'm trying to think of the name of the other types of examinations where there won't be an exam, it'll be coursework based or evidence based. And this qualification, we were informed in the last WASAC meeting, will probably go live in 2021 in September, which is astonishing, really, because I first heard about this in the autumn term, and to turn this around, to create a syllabus, to come up with the awarding policies, etc., in such a short space of time is very positive. Once it's been created, though, there is this concern that we would like schools, where possible, to offer the WJEC full course or short course. I think that is still the preferred route that we would ask schools to consider, but also they have this option of the agored qualification to meet a statutory requirement if they're providing RE and there is no award at the end of it. So very positive to note that it's been, if you like, the end of a very, very long road where it's been repeated and repeated, that a lot of schools are pulling examinations in RE, and actually this is a really good solution to that problem. But as I said, there is this concern that we don't want schools to drop their WJEC full course or short courses. In light of this, this provides something for those schools that are not necessarily offering anything at all. Thanks, Roger.
Well, that's really good news, Phil. I think it's very important to have that backup. I went down this route, believe it or not, in the 1990s, when there wasn't an alternative really other to GCSE. And so we developed our own individual course that met our requirements at that particular time. I presume it's probably going to be quite similar to this one. So it's very encouraging that we've got that backup. I think that means that there will be an increased take-up right across the board, hopefully. And I'm amazed at the speed that's been put into place, because we didn't have to meet that requirement at this stage, did we, in terms of the timeline of actually initiating the new national curriculum. Any questions or thoughts on that from anybody? Okay, right, so we'll move on then. 5H, we have invited Julia Buckley-Jones, who will be joining us later during the course of this meeting, to make a presentation in the spring term to our meeting with regard to the progress of the initiation of the new national curriculum at the bottom end of the phases in education. And she will, I think that will prove to be very interesting. I've been really encouraged to hear from Lowry in particular as well, the way schools have been working together in clusters to actually support each other in the development of this. And I think that's been very, very helpful. So we'll have an opportunity to ask her detailed questions and hear from her experience. And I think particularly, as we've already said in this meeting, doing all this in the middle of COVID must have been a nightmare. And the fact that they're making such progress, I think it's a lot about the quality of our teachers. I don't know whether you want to add anything, Larry.
No, just to echo that, Roger, they've faced immense challenges, and they've overcome such obstacles, despite anxieties around their own safety, their family safety. They've continued to support learners, working extremely well in this cluster model now. We've got some good alliances throughout the local authority where we're sharing good practice, sharing resources, supporting similar schools, forging relationships between similar schools. And of course, the cluster approach eases our method of communication and any strategic items that need to be raised and considered, and then we meet with all our heads on a fortnightly basis. So yes, just really proud of all our schools.
Okay. Well, perhaps I don't know whether in meetings that you attend, obviously, where all this is considered, if you could just perhaps record our particular appreciation as well, Larry, from this meeting. I presume this is probably one of the few meetings.
Will do.
Where there are actually users outside the system. Okay.
Yeah, well, I'll relay that.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, item 6. There's been quite a drive from Humanists UK, in fact, to actually ensure that there is some form of humanist representation on SACREs. And we've had a request from Vanessa Wiseman, who's told us about Melanie Morris, who would like to join this particular group. So before we consider that, this is an unusual step, and it's a step which I think what's been happening nationally in relationship to the curriculum makes more likely. I'd just like to propose that we invite Melanie to come to our next meeting to present on the positive impact representation could have in supporting the work of SACRE in relationship to the ORE curriculum. That's all I want to do at this stage. We obviously have an important item on the next agenda. I'd like to propose that. Could I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second that, because I'd like to understand really a little bit more about what a humanist is or does, and yeah, I hold my hands up. I don't fully understand. I have met people before who have said that they're humanists, but I guess I haven't had the discussion. So yeah, it would be good to get an understanding as to what they feel they can contribute, and a better understanding as to what a humanist is. So yeah, I'm happy to second.
Yeah, thank you very much, Julie. I think that's, sorry, Hugh. You're muted, Hugh.
Can I just be clear now as to the constitution of SACRE, because we defined that, na I siarad Cymraeg, I'll speak in Welsh, da ni'n diffinio yn crefydd fel ffydd y fyma, a dwi'n yn gwybod ydy hwn yn dod o dan ffydd. Felly ydy hwn, gan nad ydy o ddim yn ffydd yn dod o dan yr agreed syllabus, ydy o'n rhan o'r cwricwlwm llawn felly, ynde. Dwi'n aneglu, da ni wedi sôn am nifer o bethau rwan yn y pwyntiau dwytha. Ydy'r fframwaith wedi cysylltiad rhwng y fframwaith a'r cwricwlwm llawn felly, ynde. A mae hynny wedyn yn trosglwyddo i sut mae ysgolion yn trefnu addysg grefyddol ag agweddau o'r cwricwlwm o fewn ysgolion. Efallai'n wahanol yn y ysgolion cynradd i'r ysgolion uwchradd. Ond y cyfansoddiad i ddechrau efo ffydd, a wedyn lle mae barn rhywun sydd ddim yn cael ei gyfri mewn ffydd yn cyfri o ran y fframwaith ei hun ac o fewn y cwricwlwm llawn felly. Cwestiwn digon cymhleth dwi'n meddwl, ond swn licio gael hynny'n glir i ddechrau. Dim bod fi'n gwrthwynebu'r bobl yma ddod i mewn a dim byd o gwbl felly, dwi'n meddwl bod yn help i ni ddeall, ond mae rhaid i ni fod yn glir cyn cyfarfod lle mae hyn yn sefyll i gyd, ynde. Dwi'n meddwl ella bod Phil yn mynd i ateb y cwestiwn yma, dwi'n yn gwybod.
Okay, I suppose there's a lot of technical, legal jargon, I suppose, involved with this. But very recent, not so recently, the word religion is sort of linked with religion and philosophical convictions. You can't sort of take out religion and just say, right, religious worldviews. Actually, everyone's got a worldview and an opinion about the world and about how it works. And so they've rephrased the term religion and philosophical convictions. And that's a coverall for those that have obviously a religious conviction, but those that have maybe a humanist conviction as well. And that is a requirement of law. So wherever religion would have been included in the past, it's now being replaced by religion and philosophical convictions, and that's sort of just a blanket change. So our constitution, if you read into that, it would read obviously religious representatives, but it would have to change to religious and philosophical conviction as sort of representatives of those, which would obviously include humanism and atheism, because they would have an input into religion. And thinking that the name change of RE is going to religion, values and ethics, we did want it to change to religion and worldviews, because that would sum up the subjects probably better than religion, values and ethics. But we have got religion, values and ethics. That's what's been voted on. But it's still this idea that there's religion and worldviews, and that discussion around the philosophical convictions that people have within the UK. I heard of something I wasn't aware of, but actually Committee A, there is an unlimited number of people that can attend or be on Committee A, which would be the faith representatives on a SACRE. And if you think, we have discussed in the past, and we would like the Constitution to reflect all of the world's religions, well, as many as we can, as well as other philosophical convictions, because actually moving forward, supporting schools, creating resources, supporting teachers, having a range of worldview and religious beliefs and an expertise, if you like, on this body would make us sort of more useful from a school's point of view. So I think we would, and I think that's picked up in part of the action plan, that we would like a bit more diversity on this body, and Committee A would be the way of achieving that. Just to sum up, really, I think asking sort of a humanist to come and ask what they can present to schools is something that we would encourage, but actually I think a range of voices, humanists being amongst one of many on this committee, would be welcome. And then I think then we can support schools further in understanding the diversity or the range of diverse worldviews, beliefs, philosophical convictions that there are in Wales.
It's worth actually saying that what's being proposed, in fact, is a slight step back by the government, because initially their intention was to give non-religious views an equal standing on SACRE with each block. So there would have been 4 blocks on SACRE, non-religious would have been represented by the humanists, would have been 1 block, all the faiths would have been another, and then the teachers and the counsellors. That has been retreated from at this particular stage. I think there is a real issue, and I think you hinted at it, Hugh, about how you define what is a humanist viewpoint consensually, as opposed to everybody's own personal beliefs and interpretations. And that's something we will actually have an opportunity to explore. I also have one other concern, and that is that about the availability of teaching resources to schools in this particular area. I've never had a problem with considering atheism or agnosticism as part of ORE, but because of this initiative, there's quite a drive now by Humanist UK to provide what I would consider very misleading material, which, give an example, some of the stuff that's produced by Stephen Fry on this issue opposes religion with science. Well, you talk to all this many eminent scientists that I've met when I was in Cambridge, astrophysicists and so forth, and that's just ridiculous, obviously. So we've got to be very careful about what actually happens on the ground in this. But the next meeting will give us an opportunity to explore a perspective to see where the Humanists UK are coming from with regard to this particular issue.
You can see where I'm coming from now, from the point of view of teachers and the guidance within the framework and so on for this kind of discussion. I know that it is a philosophical discussion in many ways, and morality and all these things come into it. But if teachers are not sure, if we are not sure, teachers are not sure where we stand exactly, what should schools do? And as Roger said, what resources are really available, what is advisable to discuss and so on. And has the government noted these things in their frameworks, in their guidance, in the humanities curriculum, for instance, where science would come in, and discussions on who we are and where we're going and so on would come in here. So I haven't seen anything like that so far where we are concerned.
Yeah, that's fair to say. Colette, you're muted.
Can I just clarify the purpose of the presentation? Is it to give us information about the resources that might be available, or is it with a view to a humanist representative on SACRE or SAC, as I believe it will be called in the future? And if so, surely then do we need then to make sure that we are representative of the various faiths and philosophical views within the authority? Because just looking round and looking through the list, it seems to me that there are several other religions that are not represented on the committee at the moment. And therefore, you know, can I just clarify what is the purpose of the presentation? Is it that that person will be a member? In which case, at the next meeting, will we then have a presentation from maybe another particular group?
This is you probably recall from previous discussions we've had regards to this, that we actually, and Abdul in fact raised this as well, about we were going to co-opt members of other faiths. I think one of the issues here, and this is what makes it really difficult, is that, for instance, any particular denomination that is actually represented here can actually speak to a membership base in their congregations. They will be representing a known number of significant people who will have signed up to a particular perspective in Christianity or a worldview. And to the extent the humanist representative does that, will be an issue. If a Muslim, for instance, comes along and we invite what the local imams to come and represent, okay, the question for me is not whether they would provide a good perspective as a co-opted member, because I think that would be very, very valuable, but whether they would become a voting member, because they would have substantial members within Conwy County that they are representing, which is the basis of membership of this whole group. That's something hopefully we'll be able to tease out. And the answer to your question is, yes, we are considering whether we actually adopt a person as a member as part of this particular committee. But that will be down to us, because this is a locally determined matter in the end, despite what national government actually says. Julie.
Yeah, yeah, I think I would like to see a wider representation. If we are going to invite along a representation from the humanist, I don't know what term you use, group or religion, obviously doesn't really feel appropriate as such, but yeah, I mean, I can remember back to meeting Colette when we had something that we run called the School Effectiveness and Standards Group, and learning about the multi-faith pupils and families that access the Catholic school. And I'd like to see something similar in terms of representation here, because when you have faith, whatever that may be, and that kind of broader thinking, you know, and whether that's philosophical convictions or whether that's religion, I think it's important that we're inclusive and that we can understand what that means and how we can best support and represent those thoughts and worldviews, I guess, as Philip said before, because quite a lot of my friends refer to themselves as part of the interfaith now, and it would be good to kind of get that representation as part of this, because I think the new curriculum is a really fantastic opportunity around well-being. My eldest studied RE and ethics at A level just a couple of years ago, and wow, it was fantastic for her. She's gone on to do medicine, and I think it would be great if young people realise the benefit of that course. And Chloe isn't particularly religious, but I mean, she was brought up through the church with us, but yeah, it's really empowering for young people to understand the different faiths, isn't it, and to understand what that means to people. So yeah, I think it'd be good to have that representation on here. If that's a local decision, obviously I don't quite know exactly how Sacre runs, but if we can locally invite in, whether it is the imam or whoever it may be, obviously we've got quite a large number of Jewish families that live locally as well. So it seems to make sense to have some more representation so that we can have a wider discussion on some of the issues coming up. But yeah.
The only issue I think relates to that, I think everybody would agree with everything that you've pretty well said there. Certainly the breadth of perspective when we're living in a multicultural society and world is really, really important. Even back in the 1980s, like Colette, I can share that, you know, we had lots of children of other faiths attending the Church of England school where I was deputy in London. And they did because we thought spirituality is really, really important. And we provided opportunities for the celebration of Diwali, for instance, because we asked their pupils to come along to the communion service and so forth. So equally, we gave them a chance to celebrate Diwali. And that really improved relationships in the community. It was a very positive thing all round. Hugh. Hugh, you're muted, Hugh.
We're you know, we're always talking about worldviews and faith and so on, but you know, sometimes we've just been noted as Black Lives Matter. Faith, to some of us, is connected with diversity, isn't it? And we haven't got diversity on the Sacre group anyway, and I am not experienced in any way in some of these matters that are discussed. So I think it's important that we think, are we representative in diversity terms as well, not only faith, but in and thinking and so on, but in diverse ways as well.
Yeah, well, I think we've got a genuine consensus with regard to this, and it looks as though this particular invitation might very well be the forerunner of an exploration of opportunities to invite other members of the faith community in Conwy to come to this meeting. And I'm getting nods from everywhere, so I think that's generally approved. And I think that's the basis on which we can move forward from this meeting. Okay, so any further things before we move on? Okay.
So we can't have an official vote on that, Roger, because we're not quorate, but you can go back and vote
We'll go
once.
back to the end.
Yeah,
we'll
once Julia joins. Okay.
Yep. Right. Okay. Right. Well, we come to the action plan. I produced the original action plan, and then, hello, I've lost you. Hang on a second. Oh, come on.
We can still see and hear you, Roger.
Oh, that's all right. I'm back. I'll put some more papers on the computer. I produced the original action plan, and then I had the meeting with Lowry with regard to this, which I'll refer to in a second. And then Phil, in consultation with Lowry, produced the management plan. And I will take questions for clarification as we go through each section. We will look at each section at a time, going through individual items. Phil in particular, or I can be asked questions, sorry, about the implementation of the plan, and then we'll vote on each section. I know it's not an official vote, but if we have a consensus established as we go along, when we come to sign it off after Julia joins us, we'll feel confident we're in the right place with regard to that. So, first of all, I know you've had the notes, but it's probably quite a good summary. First of all, things record is that thanks to Lowry in particular, the local authority is very much supporting the rollout of the management plan, which has been developed with regard to the action plan. And you've got the current matrix that we've got for this meeting as a result of that. Lowry and Chris Wynn were looking then at the various mechanisms of communication routes and how the finalized version of this plan would be integrated into the local authorities service development plan. That's an important step forward, because that means what we decide in this group is going to have a natural flow through to decision making and implementation. And I think that's going to be something new for us, and I'm really heartened by that. They're going to be, and this is again a tribute to the thinking that Lowry did with regards to the implementation, there are going to be three key groups in managing the plan. Ourselves, who will continue to advise, and then the local authority school improvement team of officers, into which Phil will be incorporated for the purposes of actioning the plan, and that's already been implemented. Phil, I think you've already been to a meeting, haven't you? Yeah, with regard to that. And then, and I guess it's important for the teachers to put together a professional task group of a maximum of 10 teachers taken from all educational sectors, primary, cluster reps, secondary and special schools, to actually look at a lot of the groundwork, particularly in relationship to the production of materials and also the communication of what we're doing through clusters, etc. So those three, there is one missing part of the overall planning, and that, in fact, we'll come to that later, and that is a link between what we decide here and the education committee itself. But I'll come back to that at a later point. All communications are going to be channeled through the local authority, and very pleasingly, Phil's going to be offered some time to actually manage this as well. And given where we were, most of you remember when we lost Phil altogether not so long ago, that seems to me an enormous step forward, and I'm particularly gratified by that. In addition, and sadly there are no teachers here to celebrate this, the local authority will actually provide supply costs for all the teachers who are going to be involved in that particular group, which is a real encouragement as well for schools to support them in actually getting involved. And thankfully to what's been going on during COVID, one of the benefits of COVID, meetings like this are easy to put together. So in terms of time out of schools, for instance, if you have a Zoom meeting for this particular teachers group, it's much easier to pull together than it is if you actually have people having to meet centrally. So it will be a task-orientated group. It'll be led by Phil, and I hope that's going to be one of the next major steps forward. And there's been a very, Lowry was particularly keen, and we adopted this, that there will be a learner voice input into its work. And you'll notice, in fact, that there is within the management plan consultation and taking views from students on the ground, which would give a much more powerful voice as well to what we're suggesting. Because when this eventually goes through schools, it's going to have to go through up into governing bodies and so forth. So if it's coming from professionals, if it's backed up by students, it is going to, whatever's going to be suggested, it's going to be very, very powerful in terms of the integrity of its voice. Okay, the only other thing to add, I think, probably at this stage, before we look at the plan, is that there is quite a lot of interest in terms of what we're trying to do here across Wales itself. I know Libby Jones, who's the advisor of Wrexham, who's also chair of NAPFRE and also on the Watica executive, knows precisely what we're doing. And we've been given the go-ahead by the local authority in Lowry to actually share what we're doing with other SACREs across the country. Because if we are successful in making the progress which hopefully this plan is going to produce, it could have quite a significant impact if it was rolled out across other SACREs and other authorities. So I think this is a bit of pioneering work we're doing here. So I'm really pleased about the progress that we're making, but most importantly, about the support we're getting from our local authority in regard to this. Okay, so if you could pull up the plan. I'm going to take it section at a time. I'm aware that there's an enormous amount in this. So unless you've got important questions that you're not clear about, I hope we're going to be able to move through it fairly quickly. And I'll take a vote at the end of each section. As I said, that'll be a consultation rather than a vote at this stage. So the first part is developing our SACRE's partnership with the local authority. I presume you've all got this in front of you. Yeah? Yeah? Could you put your hands up if you've got it in front of you? Yeah, right, okay. Have you got a copy, Alan? You're muted, Alan.
No, I haven't, not in front of me.
There's a link in one of the emails to you.
Right.
Okay. If you want to disappear and pull it down, the whole document is there. Okay.
Okay, I will do. Okay, thank you.
Phil, is it worth us sharing the screen so we've all got it in front of us?
You're muted, Phil.
Am I allowed? Yeah, I think I can share my screen. I'll do that now. Sorry, I've got it open on an iPad and not my computer, so I'll have to open it on my computer. Sorry about this. I've got several copies of it. I'm hoping this is the right one. Yeah, this is the right one. Right, just share my screen now. Can everyone see it?
Yeah, that's the introduction we're looking at the moment. Phil, if you can move to the first page, substantive. Yeah, that's it. Whoa, yeah. Oof, gosh. Well, I'm glad I've got mine in front of me because old man I am, I can't read that. How are other people actually coping with reading that? Yeah, various hands going up there.
You could increase the percentage, Phil, couldn't you? In the bottom.
Yeah, I was just going to say. That's it, Phil. About right. Okay, let's proceed then on that basis. If you want to make a comment, I can't. Yeah, I'm not able to actually see everybody. Yeah. So I cannot see everybody at the same time. So
I should be able to see if someone raises their hand, the virtual hand, so I'll be able to.
Can you chip in and do that for me?
Yeah,
then,
will do. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be really helpful. Okay. If we look at the whole first aim there, developing our SACRA's partnerships with the local authority, you will have noted that A and B have already been mentioned at this meeting and has actually been put in place and dealt with. And I'm really pleased that the local authority are going to incorporate it into the educational development plan once it has been agreed and finalised. Okay, so we need to develop jointly develop mechanisms to evaluate the impact of our work as a SACRA, and that's going to be done through our SACRA meetings, the teacher network that we've already referred to that we're going to establish, and the educational improvement team, which Phil has already been made a member of in advance of this meeting. Just very briefly, Phil, could you just explain what the main focus of the work of the EIT is?
Yeah, I'm not going to attend every meeting. They meet obviously quite regularly, and they're sort of senior officers within Conwy that will be supporting their schools. They have been very much involved with communication regarding the COVID issues, looking at the processes and what schools, well, I suppose the everyday day-to-day working of schools and how they can support that. So in terms of my involvement there, it will be hopefully to sort of recommend teachers to become part of this teacher network. It will be feeding schools information using the communication lines that the education team already has, to provide schools with updated information, training, etc. So that's I presume that's the role of the EIT. They'll have, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And Roger, if I can just come in quickly, they are the team that links our central department with schools, and also they're the team that links with GWE. So yeah, just echoing what Phil said.
Okay, so just if you want to ask a question at any point going along, just raise your hands and Sally will bring you in.
I think who wants to speak?
Yeah.
Can I first of all say that this is quite a good, very good step forward. We've been thinking about this for many, many meetings. And I thank you, Roger, for pushing these things through with the local education authority. We need to think even from now, I think, about, you know, I agree with all these things anyway, but with the implications of this in terms of our relook again at our responsibility, relook again at the LEA's responsibility. Maybe having some sort of flow diagram for anybody who comes into SACRE, so to know exactly where we stand. And also in practice terms, maybe to have a list of things in time terms within SACRE's year, ending in a meeting to, you know, I know it's a rolling program, but to update this plan, and also to have reports from people like Phil in a meeting to update us at what's happened, and that will then provide a summary for our annual report and so on. I think we need some working documents now to go with this as this develops now. But I think this is a very good and exciting for us to know where we stand exactly.
Well, just to deal with the two main thrusts of what you've just said there, Hugh. First of all, in terms of process, you'll notice that some of them have been some of the items in it have been mentioned as third year. But clearly the first steps are putting in place the framework, which in fact, of course, is the Teachers Network, Phil's membership of the EIT, their own particular responsibilities. And of course, there's a reference as well to the ASC and the importance of that, particularly in the context of the introduction of the new curriculum with regard to this as well, which we'll consider later. I think the point you make about its induction is really important. And that takes us on to the next point, which is D, which is to explore and determine how best for the local authority to provide appropriate training for its members of its SACRE, especially those without a professional background in religious education. In addition to that, I've already spoken with Libby Jones, who's been mentioned in this meeting already, who is the permanent advisor at Wrexham, about the possibility of WASICA in particular producing an induction video for all new members of SACREs to be rolled out across the whole country. Do you think that's a particularly good idea? It's something I've been involved in. One of the other things that hats I wear is I'm chair of the local University of the Third Age, and I've just been inducting a whole, you know, new bunch of trustees in terms of our management team, and we have a national video for that, which is incredibly helpful. And I think something for, you know, for SACREs on that basis, given what you've said, I think will be a widely held view, could be really helpful. So that's ultimately, it is the responsibility of the local authority, but I think it's likely that WASICA might very well take the initiative now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Tanya has a hand raised, Chair.
Tanya?
Yeah, I just want to say something briefly. I think what you've just said is really important about a kind of national like induction video. But what I wanted to do was just quickly update you on the status of the document. So you're joining your local SACRE. That has been updated and it is available. It's a much fuller document than the original. So I think it would be really helpful, but we have to bear in mind, given the you know, the passing of the Curriculum and Assessment Wales Bill, that it's going to have to be updated again. So there's more work that needs to be done, but that is available, and I will be in touch with Phil so he can get hold of that. So that's basically what I wanted to say. Yeah.
Well, it will be helpful. Thanks for that, Tanya. It would be really helpful if that obviously could be circulated to all members, particularly those of, you know, and not only those who are newly joining, because as you said, this is a changing situation. But having been through, again, I say in my other experience, the whole area of actually having a dense document to read through compared with a video, which is very clear and picks up most of the main themes. I found prospective trustees much happier, for instance, to look at a video for 30 minutes or so forth than actually wade the way themselves through a document. But thanks for that, because I think that's an important interim measure that we can put in place. Thank you.
I'm all right. Okay.
Okay. Right, the next one, F, is to keep the agreed syllabus and its impact under review, and determine how best to report on it so the local authority is appropriately informed and thereby accountable for its implementation. That's going to be done obviously through SACRE meetings, but more importantly through the agreed syllabus conference. And how we propose to handle that is going to be dealt with later on in this management plan. So I'm not going to go further at this particular point. Okay. To encourage the local authority to develop a policy in relationship to the training of non-specialists. Phil, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, we had originally included the recruitment of RE specialists and teachers, but we felt that the local authority, it's down to a school and the governing body of the school to recruit. So we didn't feel it was the local authority's responsibility in the recruitment of RE specialists, but we could support maybe training materials regarding non-specialists, even if that's just flagging up who else or third-party providers of non-specialist training, good quality non-specialist training for religious education. We've obviously got the teacher network that might be able to provide resources and to support that. We are thinking about training videos and having them available sort of either obviously electronically, but through Hub or through other platforms to support a range of audiences. So in the actions on the right hand side, we thought maybe obviously the teacher network, we don't want to give them too much to do, but if we can target and create a bit of a work plan, training for specific audiences might be involved, and then if we decide that non-specialists are quite high up in our agenda, then we might see if we can create some training videos early on in that work programme. Thanks, Roger.
Okay, thanks for that, Phil. Okay, so next.
Who
Oh,
Robert's
sorry,
hand
Hugh.
raised.
Apologies.
Just a quick note here. I think we need to put something in regarding the Welsh language because of the Welsh language strategy now and the changes in the categorisation of schools and so on, and whether this training will be available through the medium of Welsh, for Welsh learners and so on as well. I know the authority.
Can I just cut across you there, Hugh? I hope you don't mind. But if you look at 2D, you'll see, in fact, we picked up that particular issue.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Sorry, Phil, I can't raise my hand. Sorry, I just want to come in there. Here, that is a really good point, and one that I feel particularly strongly about. And we are, as you know, we're revising or we're putting together a new WESP now, so we're including this into that.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. And it clearly is, as it comes up in it is the responsibility of the local authority to provide translation of the materials, and those materials will be coming out of the teacher network group. So I think that point's been taken on board and just echoed there, of course, by Larry. Yeah. Okay. I think the next one's important. The H, develop mutually understood mechanisms so that SACRE can be confident that the advice that we offer is appropriately reviewed and acted on by the local authority. That's been one of my primary concerns about attending these meetings, that I felt very often we were talking shop and other things we were saying did not have a natural outflow in terms of decision making. The conduit for that is going to be obviously the local authority being represented on this at the SACRE meetings, and I'm really pleased that certainly for the last 6 months now, Lowry has been coming to these meetings, and that has been really, really helpful. And also the EIT, which Phil is now going to be a member of. But I think there is one other aspect, and I'll just refer to it here. I think, and perhaps you could just feed back on this, or either Julie or Lowry. I think the important part of the matrix that is actually missing is that the person who, one of the local councillors on this committee, is actually on the education committee. If what we're actually proposing here goes into the, you know, the local area development plan. So if Lowry or Julie, is that going to be possible?
Are you talking about the LDP?
Yeah, yeah. Well, the education, basically it's about the education.
Right, okay, yeah.
The education committee, yeah.
Education scrutiny, how does SACRA feed into that, Lowry? I can't recall whether...
It doesn't at the moment.
Right, okay.
Doesn't have a delineated...
The way in which we could do that, and Phil and I can discuss this, is that, Phil, we provide sort of an annual update to Education and Skills Committee. You know, even taking the action plan and as a forward working plan just to inform members.
That's one option, or it could go through. So we have a members bulletin, Roger, that goes out regularly. So it could be that we share the minutes of the meeting in there, and then if members want to discuss anything further, then it could come as an item to scrutiny, couldn't it?
Well, that, if we were to drop both of those suggestions, what we actually get is part of the normal flow for people who are interested through the bulletin. And if someone, obviously from the councillors on this committee, could take responsibility for that, but picking up Larry's suggestion as well, it would give a real perspective at an appropriate point during the course of the year if Phil was to go along and actually outline the current progress, or introduce initially, of course, this particular plan, and then outline the progress appropriately by invitation. How would that be facilitated, Larry?
Phil and I can discuss that in our meetings. I'm more than happy to do that, because we have a forward work plan, so we can put it into the forward work plan when we see fit.
Great. Okay. Well, we can take that forward as an amendment, or sorry, as addition to the plan, and also Julie's suggestion about using the bulletin as well. Bill, if we could, we'll put those in as additions to the overall plan. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it would need to be a discussion with the chair of that scrutiny committee to ensure they wanted it. I don't want it to seem as though we're dictating what goes on to scrutiny. But yeah, I'm sure the chair, Philip Capper, is the chair of education scrutiny currently. I'm sure he'd be happy for it to come along as an update to scrutiny. But that discussion would just need to be had with him. And the members update seems a really good opportunity to share that, because that goes out to all members, you see. So you would only have a certain number that would sit on education scrutiny, whereas the member update goes out to all 59 councillors within Conwy. So you get a wider audience, really.
Okay, well, yeah. Well, thank you indeed for that. I think it's worth commenting at this particular stage as well that all these matters are the responsibility not of ourselves, but of the local authority. We are effectively an advisory body. We're not a decision-making group, and we can only make recommendations. So I think it's really important, therefore, that the local authority, through its councillors, are aware of what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so negotiating a budget for the work of SACRA with the local authority that will enable us to carry out our role effectively in advising, as I've just mentioned. What's going to be the mechanism for that, Larry? We haven't got a mechanism. We know it's, Bill thought it would be through the EIT. Is that the route for that?
Sorry, Roger, just repeat that, please.
the whole issue of negotiating a budget for our work. Okay.
Oh, yeah, that's old chestnut, Roger. I think I intentionally put myself on mute when I heard the word budget. I think you'll know that as well as I do, that things aren't good from a financial perspective for local authorities at the moment. So I think that the way I'd appreciate in moving forward is that Phil and I plan the work that's required and that we fund as necessary, as we have done. You know, we've provided a few additional days now because we knew that there was a area of work that needed to be prioritised. So if you are in agreement, I'd like to take that approach moving forward. And I think, you know, our contribution to the action plan and our work with Phil shows our commitment to this. So that's the approach I'd like for you to consider.
Yeah, well, I want to other members as the chair, I'd want to endorse that, because I think that, as you say, in these times of financial constraint, it's very important that we actually show flexibility. And there's no doubt about the commitment to actually enabling all this to happen. So if we can we'll make a record of that as we negotiated on an ongoing basis through meetings with the head of service, Phil. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks for that. Okay, that section. Any further questions on the whole of that section? No? Okay. All those, I'm taking a consensual vote at this point. So all those in favour of everything in the section, could you just raise your hands, please? Okay, is that unanimous, Sally?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Great, okay. Right, support the development and equipping of high quality teaching and learning in our schools. Okay, Phil's going to take much of the lead on this because this is obviously the area of his enormous expertise. But the first one is to determine an agreed mechanism with the local authority to identify good practice and trends within schools, and to identify schools that have got inappropriate practice and non-compliance, so that we can provide professional support for them. So, Phil, do you want to talk about just talk us through how that's going to be done?
Yeah, in the right-hand column, we look at the mechanisms in which can feed into that. So we talked about the teacher network group, Estin reports as we already received them, the education improvement team feeding us with information that's relevant for us. We have talked about this CYSAG questionnaire being quite a substantive piece of work. That could develop into cluster surveys. Schools are working in clusters really well, and actually sometimes a school's not very good at putting itself forward, and yet it provides really high quality work. And actually a cluster might be able to point in the direction of another school where work is being done well. I don't mean in a negative sense, I mean in a positive sense. So cluster surveys to identify and quality assure that good practice. And then the idea of pupil and learner voice, pupil questionnaires, and being able to work out what that would look like and sort of who we would choose. So this is a long-term plan. Initially, the teacher network group and Estin reports and the EIT would be the mechanisms, hopefully moving into the ones that are at the bottom of that box.
Yeah, just possibly to add there, picking up Hugh's earlier point with regards to this, I mean, there's a whole complex series of proposals coming out of this document. And only the third year ones have actually got the timeline. Once we've got the structure in place, and particularly pull the teachers network together and get some idea in terms of the pace that we can pursue some of these, I think it will be important, as Hugh suggested, that we actually get a clearer timeline of individual proposals that actually being taken through the system, and that we can therefore be informed at appropriate times within SACRE meetings, and have the opportunity to comment or hear about them.
Yeah, the reason the timelines have not been included so far is the C word, isn't it? It's COVID.
Yeah.
If we'd have thought this time last year, I think we'd have thought that most schools would return back to normal in the autumn term, definitely by the spring term. And obviously we're just coming out of a national lockdown with schools going back into bubbles quite regularly. So I think we're in bubbles for the foreseeable future, which is obviously going to have a big impact on school and leaders' management time. So being able to sort of move this forward is really down to the capacity of the system, not the capacity of us, but the capacity of the system as a whole. So that's the reason we've not included dates. Obviously the third, fourth, sort of second and third year aspirational actions we can put in, but anything that has a sort of an immediacy about it, we're obviously unable to comment.
Okay, that's helpful, Phil. Thank you. Okay, B, to support the developments of the instruments and professional links to support the work of ORE teachers, quite a number of them are actually detailed there. Again, over to you, Phil.
And just the publication through the teacher network, through the RE newsletter, we'll have the information on Hub as well. Pointing to external websites, CYSAG website is being updated. It looks very good, or it will look very good, and that'll have a lot of information in it as well. And also we were talking about using our annual report to flag a lot of this information. So there'll be the avenues in which we'll be able to publicise those things.
Yeah, and I think really the teacher network group is probably going to be the key one there, isn't it? Because this is, and the important factor there is how that network disseminates what is actually being achieved and proposed out to the other, professionals in the field, particularly given that there are large numbers of non-specialists teaching in schools. That's going to be a key network further to that to actually establish. Okay. To encourage developing skills of self-evaluation in ORE teachers and criteria by which they can judge their success.
Who has his hand raised, Chair?
Oh, sorry, Hugh.
You're on
still
mute.
muted. You're still muted, Hugh.
Un peth efallai dylen ni ystyried yma ydy effaith y fforddi athrawon a cydweithio hefo efallai Prifysgol Bangor neu unrhyw brifysgol arall hefyd fyma o ran datblygu athrawon. Mae yna gyrsiau eraill hefyd o fewn prifysgolion fysa yn berthnasol i ni. Mae yna bryder, yn enwedig yn y Gymraeg eto, hefo prinder athrawon sydd yn dod allan o prifysgolion gydag arbenigedd pwnc hefyd, ynde, fyma. Ac efallai bod yna rwy'n gyda'r wybodaeth o faint o rhain sydd ar gael a beth ydy cynlluniau hyfforddi athrawon yng Nghymru i ddiwallu yn anghenion ni fel sacre ac awdurdod lleol felly. Iawn.
Yeah. Important point there, Phil. What's the possibilities there?
Yeah, so in the verbal update for CYSAG a little bit later, professional development regarding the new curriculum was discussed. There is an agreement from Welsh Government. CYSAG have put a paper together. They did a survey amongst teachers to find out their confidence in teaching religious education, and especially within the new curriculum. And they found that teachers would really appreciate professional learning in this area. So in the document that was created by CYSAG, they did almost a bit of, not a flow diagram, but they did a sort of a load of circles around professional learning for all of the stakeholders that would be involved in providing training. So people like the universities, the consortia, SACREs, the local authorities, etc., etc., and who would be the ones that provide that training. So I think this is something that's is part of a national conversation as well, and because it's part of a national conversation, those bodies I think will be hopefully brought into the discussion from a Welsh Government point of view. So I'm hoping, one of the questions that I had, but I wasn't able to post it unfortunately because of my technology, was that CYSAG have created this this document to support Welsh Government in providing professional learning for religious education. One thing I wasn't aware of is who is the people that are actually going to action that, and whether it will be CYSAG to bring everybody to the table, so the universities, the consortia, etc., or will it be Welsh Government that brings everybody to the table? So it's something that is on a national consciousness, and hopefully we'll hear about that. What I'm hoping is if there is a national drive for professional learning, and that drive brings in people like Bangor University, then actually that conversation will happen at quite a high level, and there might be some money involved in the creation of the materials and hopefully then the training. So I can't answer that question directly regarding Bangor, but there are things happening nationally that may help that conversation to develop.
Okay, just a question there, Phil. I mean, understand obviously this is national government and CYSAG actually dealing with this on a national basis. Just picking up Hugh's point, is there any point in us independently, actually, as the local SACRE here, actually exploring the possibility of a link with Bangor in relationship to this?
I don't know. They don't have a subject officer in the way that they used to. They are bringing, I think, serving teachers in to teach on their RE programs and to put the RE within the primary program. So I don't think there is any expertise, as it were, within Bangor. They will bring it in externally if they need to provide it at all. So their subject specialist retired a couple of years ago, and they're not replacing her. They will just bring in external people to provide the expertise that she used to. So I don't know if it's worth having a conversation, but I don't know if they'll have the expertise to be able to provide the training directly.
Okay, well, in terms of the way we take this forward, can we just ask, first of all, that you would A, have that conversation, just to make sure that that is the case, and B, that you would actually take forward this issue, okay, to CYSAG, as this is being obviously discussed on a national basis with Welsh Government, and that's going to be the current forum. But if you could particularly from us take forward that as an issue that we're really sort of keen to find out what the progress is going to be. You.
Jenny has her hand raised also, Chair, just so you know.
Okay, thanks.
You're on mute, Hugh.
You're on mute, Hugh. Hugh, you are on mute. Hugh, you're on mute.
Well, Hugh's just on mute. Oh, sorry, go on.
Something, the course directors in Bangor would know what is done within the courses itself. And we're talking about primary and secondary here. So there might be two different people with the information. And they would also know the numbers that are turned out as well, maybe in the secondary sector with the knowledge of religious education. So I think a contact with university I think is very, very important. My experience with some of these things is that sometimes local contact can push things much easier than the national one, and the national one usually follow local contact in many respects.
Yeah. Well, as Phil's already said, there isn't the advisor or the person responsible, sorry, is actually retired. But if Phil has already agreed to explore what the current conduit for that is and to find out if we can make progress in that area. So that's taken on board. Jenny.
Thanks. Yeah, I was just going to add Bangor Diocese and St Asaph Diocese are currently looking at training opportunities, and also with Church in Wales. So there could be a way that we link and support all of our schools, so that schools could perhaps join that. And I'm just thinking about the NatTray as well, Phil. I'm setting up some NatTray groups. I've already started with our schools. There's no reason why those couldn't be extended and developed further, really, for access for all schools within the all schools, county primary and church schools.
I think that'd be a good idea. I've been exploring the Natre group again. It's something that I think went off my radar for a while, but I belong to an organisation called ARIAC, and with sort of the RE Today subscriptions as well. I think there's a lot of information out there, and you've just reminded me. I would encourage the schools that are part of our teacher network group to actually form a specific Natre group. I think that would be good if they became an official Natre group as well. So yeah, definitely worth exploring. And also, I'm talking with Liz Thomas on Friday, but I'm conscious that because church schools are having to deliver an agreed syllabus type content, or a content that meets the supporting framework. I suppose my question to Liz at the moment is, will there be two separate curricula running, or will schools be encouraged to deliver a specific curriculum within the Church in Wales that also meets sort of the agreed syllabus, or the supporting framework, or the criteria within the supporting framework? I don't think it'll be called that by then. So I think there's a lot of commonality, we have a lot more in common now than we used to regarding the expectations on teaching, especially within the new curriculum. So I think working together moving forward would be really useful. So thanks, Jenny.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to let you know as well, you know, Bangor and St Asaph Diocese work together already. I've got quite a strong link with this, my counterpart. Supports me obviously with the Welsh language resources for our schools, and we've already been looking at the new curriculum within the RE within humanities and Cynefin, which I think actually would work really well for all schools. So there is Liz you know, and looking provincially, but you've also got Tracy, who's based in Bangor, and myself in St Asaph as well. A good link there. And you've also got within Bangor University, of course, the St Mary's Trust.
Oh, what's that, Jenny?
Which gives grants for education,
right.
Religious education to schools. So I don't know whether it's only for church schools, but personally, I wouldn't think it would be. And I'm sure there could be a way that if that was, that you would put the training out for the church schools, a lot of which are voluntary controlled. So they're not VA. And voluntary controlled schools, so the curriculum is more like your county school.
Yeah.
But there are options there. There are ways forward, and as Hugh says, you know, I'm very aware of my limitations with Welsh, but I'm also very aware of the need within our schools, especially my Welsh medium schools. So there are places there, and just keep contact.
There are a number of really helpful suggestions there, which we will definitely incorporate into the plan. And probably it might be appropriate, given the additions we're making at this meeting, which have all been very helpful so far, is that, you know, at the end of this meeting, Phil and I will meet together. We'll modify and produce a final version of the plan before the timelines, I must say, so that all those are incorporated. But thanks indeed for that, Jenny. I wasn't aware of some of those things at all, so that's really, really helpful. Appreciate that. Okay. Oh yes, we actually talked about the possibility of having, initially we thought annually, but that's not possible at the moment, but an ORE teachers conference, possibly in combination with other local authorities with whom we've already established, mainly through Phil, not entirely, we established links with, led by an external consultants. And obviously that would focus on matters of contemporary importance in ORE. So Phil, do you want to just briefly talk about that?
Yeah, is that in this section or is that a little bit later? Oh yeah, sorry, part E. Yeah, it's on the screen now. So yeah, we talked about the possibility of a conference, possibly maybe with Denbighshire, bringing in external consultants if we can, just to sort of provide a a good point of reference for schools. But I think within the professional learning that's coming from centrally, and I know that CYSAG are also talking about a conference as well. I think there needs to be a little bit of clarity in what is the expectations of the conference, and also we're not stepping on other sort of toes in terms of maybe a CYSAG conference looking at the new curriculum. I think we would encourage our teachers to go to things that are of a national flavour. And obviously, if we were to arrange a conference at the same time as a CYSAG conference, then head teachers are obviously going to choose which ones their teachers can go to or not go to. So I think that there is a real need for a national awareness of what's going on within the professional learning for Welsh Government, within what CYSAG are offering, and then also looking at what we can offer as well. I think the digital age that we're in, sort of being able to provide digital conferences and Zoom conferences means they're a lot more flexible than they've ever been before. I think I wouldn't have expected to go on to a digital meeting prior to lockdown, but I think it's a brilliant asset that we've got now. It means that we can get into schools and into classrooms without having to travel. I think teachers not having to travel is a big win. So yeah, I think this is something that needs a bit more of a conversation, and it needs to sort of take into account the national picture as well.
Yeah. I mean, the intention was primarily when we discussed it, I think, looking at the teacher network group coming together on a much more local basis, dealing with issues. And I do know that talking to, again, through Libby, that she would be very interested in getting involved from the Wrexham end as well. So that's to be looked at going forward. Okay. With regard to all those items there, are we all agreed on them? Okay, is that unanimous, Sally?
Yeah, looks like it, yeah.
Great, okay. Right, inspection reports. We talked about the possibility of inviting head teachers that have recently had an inspection to share their experiences and present how Ori and collective worship is delivered in their schools. This will be in the second and third year down the plan. Phil, you also mentioned the EIT involvement in this. How was that? How are you seeing that?
Because they'll obviously have an ear to the ground as to how their inspections went. So they'll be able to let us know who did particularly well, whether RE was an issue or discussed in the feedback meetings at the end of their inspections. So it's the knowledge that they will have that we won't have that will help find and identify teachers that would provide their experiences for Sacre.
One of the reasons why we thought about this in particular, as we've noticed that testing reports in this area are particularly generalised and haven't been massively helpful, and this will give us a much greater insight into actually what's going on in maybe just one of our schools, but certainly an example of good practice as well. Okay. To offer consultant help to schools who might need help in writing their post-inspection plans in the light of inspection revealed deficiencies. This was an attempt to be very supportive of the inspection process that's going on. We talked about the teacher network group getting involved in this, obviously, and cluster working is already taking place, so there's mutual support available already there. What we think of in terms of video resources, Phil?
Well, it's just that as we create a video resource, it continues, it can be banked and used at a later date. So obviously the more resources that we create, the more opportunities we will have to provide support for schools. So that was what I meant there, that as we create a library of video training and supporting resources, then if there is an issue within a school, they might be able to access the library and find some training that they could use for a staff meeting or something. So that's where I was thinking with the video resources, that obviously they won't be tailored directly to a school situation, but they might be quite generic. And actually, as areas are identified by an inspection, these videos might become might be able to help that school in a particular area.
Thank you. Okay, now that's clear. Previously, before, when we had a full-time advisor, Phil, would you have been the person to actually go into a school after an SD report indicated that the school needed some kind of support? Would that have been the procedure that would have happened, you know, historically?
Yes, yeah. And what would happen is if when Esting comes back to check how on the progress of the school, it'd be the reports that I wrote about the school and the progress in that area that they would use as evidence for that progress.
I know this is a difficult issue to you personally, but would it be appropriate for us to offer, you know, a consultant support to the school? Larry, I don't know what you think about this as an issue, or would we leave that, in fact, for the local authority to actually initiate? She's gone. Hello?
Oh, she's still here. I can see her on the list.
I know that GWER would be very much involved in schools' action plans as a result of an inspection that requires follow-up. So GWER, if there was an issue with religious education, it would be GWER, the regional consortia, that would make sure that the support is available. So I think they would, ironically, they would probably ask me or a colleague of mine, Bethan, who used to support SACRAs on Anglesey and in Gwynedd. They would probably approach us. I think if it's in Wrexham, they might approach Libby. But so, yeah, I think if to offer support, if there's one thing GWER requires, if school goes through an inspection that requires improvement, then GWER is very much involved in monitoring the progress and looking at the action plans for schools to improve in those areas. So I think that we could do with maybe just clarifying what that progress might look like and whether they would involve SACRAs, which I don't think they would. But obviously I would know about that if they were in a Conwy school, because I would probably be asked to go and support them.
Yeah, I understand that. Here, you're muted here. You're muted.
Ga I egluro hwn yma. Dwi'n meddwl na'n lle ni ydi gweld bod cael adroddiad beth sy'n digwydd os na gymorth iawn wedi rhoi ysgolion. A mae gen yr awdurdod drefn benodol ynglyn â hyn, a mae gen GWE bartneriaeth hefo pob ysgol. Mae yna berson yn gysylltiedig â pob ysgol yn cynllunio unrhyw gynllun ôl arolygu gyda'r ysgol yna. Mae'r awdurdod addysg hefyd lle mae yna broblemau ac Estyn isio gweld dod yn ôl i ysgol i weld os ydy bethau wedi gwella. Mae'r awdurdod hefyd yn gallu creu pwyllgor i weld beth yw'r cynnydd. Mae hynny'n cynnwys swyddogion yr awdurdod, llywodraethwyr yr ysgol, a hefyd aelodau o GWE, a hefyd gynrychiolaeth o'r cynghorwyr weithiau hefyd i mewn yn y peth. Felly, efallai na dyna beth da ni isio y glir i bawb ddeall ydy beth sy'n digwydd os oes na wendid o fewn ysgol. Ac ryw baragraff neu ddau bach i egluro hynny da ni isio. A'n cyfrioldeb ni wedyn ydy, wel, ydy hyn wedi digwydd. Ynde, os da ni'n gwneud hynny, nid i wneud o yn hunan. Felly, yr rheswm dwi'n gwybod ydy bod fi wedi bod yn trwy'r drefn yma yn ddiweddar. A mae Ysgol Dyffryn Conwy newydd ddod allan o grafanga Estyn ar hyn o bryd. Felly, ond mae gen Lowri ar awdurdod drefn benodol iawn, a ga i ddweud gefnogol iawn hefyd, cydweithio hefo GWE yn y pethau yma. Efallai bod yna agweddau rwan oherwydd bod ni yn edrych ar addysg grefyddol a yr agweddau o fewn pethau eraill ydy y world views, meddwl, health and well-being ac yn y blaen. Mae yna bethau efallai hefyd sydd ddim yn cyffwrdd ag addysg grefyddol yn hollol bendant felly. Ond mae'r cwbl yn dod allan mewn unrhyw gynllunio gyda'r awdurdod. A dwi'n gweld bod Lowri nôl ar y sgrin rwan, a dwi eisiau camol yr awdurdod yma i'r gefnogaeth da ni wedi gael yn bersonol yn yr ysgol.
Diolch yn fawr, Hugh. Roger, do you want me to come in?
Yes, Larry.
Apologies if I had to. I've got an issue with the school, so I'm just trying to take another call as well. Apologies. Hugh's right, and yes, Ysgol Dyffryn Conwy have just come out of Estyn review and have worked tirelessly towards that. I've done a great job. Very proud of them. We have. I'm going to put it in the chat as well, so you can lift it for the minutes for these purposes. We've got various mechanisms by which what Hugh's outlined are done. We have regular monthly quality board meetings with GWE, so that's between GWE officers, school improvement advisors, and our education improvement team, where we support our school's improvement journey. I don't want to say that we monitor schools. I think that word monitoring is overused, but we collate data on a cluster level and an individual school level via GWE, and then we discuss any areas of improvement that we need to support particular schools with. Also, as a local authority, we play a central role in ensuring that any post-inspection action plan is adhered to and worked according to. So we do that in each case, and we hold accelerated improvement boards with schools to ensure that they're on track in terms of their post-inspection action plan. So, we've got quite robust processes in place. So any issue would be brought to our attention. Of course, we've got a really good partnership with GWE, and we use them to gather intelligence from individual schools, both in a supportive way, but also to ensure that they're on track. So I can put something in the minutes, in the chat for the minutes for those purposes, Roger. But if Phil is attending our education improvement team meetings now, obviously not on a very regular basis, but we will bring these to his attention as required, using the mechanisms we have in place.
Okay, well, that's really helpful. That sounds very comprehensive in terms of mechanisms, and we will record them. It clarifies what you, as you suggested, what the local authority is actually doing post-Estyn. And you're suggesting, therefore, that the conduit back to this group would be Phil, because where there was a concern, the EIT would have actually looked at it, yeah?
Yes, yeah.
Right, okay. Well, we need to record that so that we're all clear on what the responsibilities are. That's really, really helpful. Thank you. Okay, can we move on to collective worship? Right, given Estyn's inability to provide informed and useful feedback on this, to obtain agreement with the local authority on how to effectively support the delivery of collective worship, we've already agreed that that's going to be through a CYSAG questionnaire. Is that meant to... Have we agreed it's going to be an annual questionnaire, Phil?
I think we're doing a questionnaire annually, but it doesn't necessarily have to always be included in that annual questionnaire.
Right, yeah, I think I get that, yes. Okay. Okay, the establishment of criteria for schools to effectively self-evaluate their collective worship provision, which I think would be a really useful tool. Can you talk us through that?
I'm just going to take a photo. Julie's giving me a ring.
while Phil's doing that, rather than delay completely, if we could move just temporarily to 4C, establish an LA protocol for schools on withdrawal from collective worship and to provide support in dealing with requests. Statutorily, this is one of our major responsibilities. Phil's talked about using the 1096 circular in order to create the Conwy LA protocol, which would then be agreed by us and placed on an appropriate website. But Larry, can you just briefly talk us through how that would be disseminated across the schools within the local authority and how binding it would be?
We can distribute this across schools, you know, via the different channels that Phil and I've already discussed, which we've utilised already to share some of the information that Phil wanted to for schools to be aware of. But again, I think this is quite operational as well, and we can discuss this with Phil as he meets our education improvement team, and whether we need to develop a different process system.
Okay, and how would that roll out then?
I don't know, Roger, to be honest with you at the moment. I think we'd need discussion on exactly what our expectations are and how we could best ensure that it's rolled out successfully. I'd like to do some work with Phil on that really and have further discussion around it.
Okay, yeah, well, that seems a good way forward. I mean, it's interesting, although we've discussed it so little actually in my time on SACRE, it is in fact one of our two main statutory responsibilities currently at the moment. So that would be really helpful. What's the position with Julia, Phil?
She's in the meeting now.
Oh, great. Welcome, Julia, where I can't see you, but wherever you are. That's great. Just to put you in the picture, any decisions that we're making have been deferred until you join with us. So we will at the end go back, and items that require decision and agreement will be taken a vote on at the end of the meeting. So we're then statutory in terms of teacher representation.
Okay, sorry. I've been in a health and safety meeting and it was very important, so sorry.
Okay, thanks for that. Okay, take us back to B, Phil.
Oh yeah, so I think this is using schools and their experience. If we can create a self-evaluation for collective worship and sort of provide materials that schools can use in the new climate of the new curriculum, pupils and self-improving systems is very, very important. So actually whatever we can do to support schools, to provide them with clear guidance or good practice, I think is in line with the new curriculum and in line with the way schools are being encouraged to develop and move forward. It's not about telling them what to do, it's providing good practice and schools sort of self-evaluating, moving themselves forward. So I think if we can do that and provide some good quality resources, that will really help the system.
Who are you thinking about in terms of putting together those resources, Phil?
I mean, it's interesting because I mean, I've got, I suppose I'd declare an interest in here. I obviously write resources for collective worship, and the schools are sort of sharing them or word of mouth is really positive within Conwy. My worry is that if we get a couple of schools together to say, oh yeah, this is what we use, then obviously that there is a conflict of interest there from my point of view. But there are plenty of resources out there, there's plenty of good practice out there, and I suppose if we can identify that either through the education improvement team, through the teacher network team, or through, we've got governors sitting on SACRE, and they will hopefully be able to investigate what collective worship looks like in their own schools. So we've got three good ears on the ground within schools, and I think if we can encourage those schools to provide maybe just a snapshot of what's working well in their schools, and we put out an open document with these are 4 or 5 ways you can deliver collective worship that are being used effectively across Conwy, then sort of schools can adopt one of those or sort of use it to inform their own practice.
Right, okay. And of course, I know you've got a professional interest here, which has been declared, but we could put links in as well, couldn't we, to people who are actually making resources available in this area as well.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be, I don't think that's inappropriate for circumstances. Okay, thanks. Okay. To encourage the development of links and materials to support schools in their collective workshop, but effectively you've been talking about that now. But that also extends obviously to using the teacher network, your newsletter, and the hub network. Yeah. Okay, any questions on that section? Okay, all those in favour, please. Unanimous, Sally?
Yeah, that's unanimous.
Great. Okay. Right section overview. Considering partnership with the local authority, surveying schools in all sectors on a rolling programme, asking senior managers and governors who are responsible for overseeing the delivery of the curriculum. And of course, as has been mentioned already, our ability to do this has been obviously going to be hampered to some extent by COVID. We were talking about doing it hopefully in late summer. You want to add anything, Phil? It's a questionnaire again, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, all of these items to do with the overview are substantially answered by the SACRE questionnaire, but we are really hampered with capacity from schools, really, and also their ability to think about the answers to these questions without the I suppose the baggage that COVID brings. So yeah, I think even if schools do start to return back to normal, whatever normal is, there is going to be, I suppose, an operational lag, isn't there, in terms of maybe some of the things that we're asking and responses for.
Yeah. And if you look at all those questions, without me just reading them out to you, I mean, there's some pretty searching questions there in terms of what the kind of priority that's actually given to the teaching of religious education within the schools. And it's going to be very interesting to see, you know, what the overall picture is. So what extent can, oh, sorry, can I just find one question before I move to you? So what extent will this questionnaire be compulsory or will it be completely voluntary, Larry?
I think we'll encourage most teachers to complete it. I think that often when we do what do you think, Phil? How is it working in other local authorities?
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of that mandatory.
I'm not either, because we get a lot of opposition when we use the term mandatory. I'd prefer for it to be more encouraging.
Yeah, I think I suppose this is the publicity side of things, isn't it? And sort of what's the purpose of the questionnaire? How will it benefit schools? What will they get out of it? I think that needs to be clearly communicated with schools before they undertake the questionnaire, to see that it's actually something that will benefit them and the local authority. I think that's very important. And so if we do put a more searching question in there, it's got to be done from the purpose of, well, actually we're looking to improve the provision for the learners in Conwy.
I don't think if we said it was mandatory, I don't think that would go. I think it would be better to do what Lowry says, you know, encourage rather than make it mandatory, because we want everyone to see purpose as positive. Do I take it from this that no other local authority in North Wales issues a questionnaire such as the one we're proposing for Conwy? Is that right, Roger?
As far as I'm aware, but Phil's was a better place to answer that.
The last time we discussed this in that fray a few years ago, Beth Ann, my colleague in Gwynedd and Anglesey, she had put together a questionnaire, but I couldn't tell you what's happened in recent years.
Yeah, but I think if we go down the line that's been suggested, that this is an encouragement. There's a supportive statements, obviously, from the local authority with the questionnaire in relationship to this. I think we're obviously going to get a much better response. So that seems to be the consensus. Hugh, you wanted to add something?
No, I
Yes, mae yna un ffordd arall hefyd o wneud hyn, yn enwedig yn yr ysgolion uwchradd, sef mae hwn fatha fydd o'n gyfrifoldeb y llywodraethwyr fel da chi wedi nodi yn un o'r pwyntiau yma. Ond mae yna lywodraethwr wedi ddynodi ar gyfer rhan fwyaf o ysgolion, ar gyfer pob pwnc felly. Ac mewn ysgolion uwchradd, yr arfer dda ydy bod y llywodraethwr dynodedig yna yn cyfarfod a'r person sy'n gyfrifol am bwnc arbennig ac yn gofyn rhai cwestiynau. Nid arolygu ydy o, ond mynd â'r neges yn ôl i'r corff llawn a cwestiynau i'r pennaeth gan y llywodraethwyr wedyn i ofyn ydy pethau yn deg, os yna gyllid, os yna broderon gan y pennaeth adran, efallai yn fanna. A mi fysai'n braf efallai, ffordd arall o wneud hyn, fysa cynnig agweddau posibl o fewn trafodaeth i lywodraethwr y dynodedig addysg grefyddol hefo pennaeth adran neu efo person sy'n gyfrifol o fewn ysgol. Mae hynny yn wneud o'n glen ac mewn partneriaeth. Ac mae unrhyw ganlyniad wedyn yn dod yn help i'r person unigol yna sydd yn gorfod delifro y maes felly, ynde, yn fanna. Ac efallai fysa help, chydig bach o help i'r rhai dynodedig yma felly, yn gymorth, a dweud y gwir, i wneud o mewn gwirionedd efallai yn fwy effeithiol weithiau trwy'r drws cefn yn garedig felly, ynde.
Yeah. I think that's, I think Larry almost talked about it when we were having our meeting, talked about some of these, what we would call tactics, basically. It's bringing people on board and getting them involved. Would it be possible on that basis for us to know, and I was used to this as a head teacher, that you had your individual subject governors. Would it be possible for us to know who the individual subject governors would be in secondary schools in particular in relationship to this?
I don't know if they're I don't know whether the local authority would hold lists of which governors are responsible for which. I presume that's in a school. And I don't think if other areas of the curriculum don't ask for that, I don't think it would be appropriate for SACRE to ask for that from an RE point of view. I don't know what Larry would say.
Way in which we could do it, and here is the chair of our Conwy Governor Association, is here, we could request subtly the information in more of a supportive guise.
I think we'd need to discuss it generally with the governors to begin with as a beginning, but I don't think the authority, do question who's responsible, but they can ask if there's something wrong. Well, how does it work? And it is the responsibility of a chair of governors to see that this happens well in school, to support the curriculum as well. And it would come up in a subcommittee of the governors as well regarding the curriculum if anything arises regarding the lack of hours, lack of resources or whatever would come up there as well. So I think we need to begin it in a quiet way to begin with, if that's possible. But I think we could, somebody like Phil maybe could note, well, what questions could a designated governor ask? We start, it's a friendly way of doing it, isn't it? There's nothing threatening here. We want the staff to be open with us without the head being there, really. I know it's not nice to say that, but that's the reasoning of it all regarding governors.
Yeah, so Julia smiling then, yes.
Yeah. Sorry, Julia.
I was thinking if SACRE could provide resources that would inform the senior leadership about what's happening in their school. So I think one of the things we discussed earlier is, who does the SACRE questionnaire belong to? Who does the information benefit? Initially, it benefits the school. So the school is the owner of the information from that questionnaire, and it will help them to make positive decisions within their own school. We will collect that information together and be able to create sweeping generalizations across the local authority. But actually, if a school can take that questionnaire, identify areas that it needs to improve, and then improve them because we've created some resources and some support material, then that's obviously going to be the best conduit to improve and support RE or collective worship in a school. But if we create a questionnaire just saying this is the information we are looking for because we are trying to make some generalizations about the local authority, it's less good. It's not going to be as effective. If we can promote it as I say, this is a self-evaluation document for yourself. Oh, and by the way, can we have access to that information because we want to create some generalization across the local authority for training purposes, then I think that will be hopefully positively received.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm in chat at the moment with Larry.
Apologies, Roger. I've got another 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
I do have to go. We'll catch up very soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much as well.
Diolch. Hwyl.
I will have to leave now, I'm afraid, as well, Roger. I have to go, I'm afraid.
Okay, well, I recognise that this was a very substantial item. So I'm going to make a suggestion here, as this is so important, and I do want the right kind of perspective, the full perspective around the table. That my suggestion is that we would stop at the end of this section and take a vote, as we've got Julia with us, on the items at this particular point. And then we would defer the completion of the action plan to our next meeting. What do people think? A quick feedback on that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, who's in favour of that very much? Okay, I'm sure Larry would be. What about everybody else? If you're in favour of that, can you put your hands up, please? Great. Okay, we will do that. So on that, I just also to add as well, particularly for you, Hugh, that when we discussed on all of you, this issue as a whole, Larry felt very strongly that drip feed, rather than banging schools with so much, but drip feeding particular items down the most potentially effective channels was the best way of taking forward a lot of the initiatives that we're proposing in this plan. So there's a kind of overall philosophy about the way we'll proceed in respect to that. Okay, I'm going to propose first of all that the invitation to the humanist to provide a presentation to Conwy Sacre. Okay, at this point, all those in favour, please.
Do we have a proposer and a seconder?
Sorry,
please, Roger?
proposer. Yeah, sorry, proposer. You.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
Seconder. Julia. All those in favour. Unanimous?
Can we take the vote separately, please, Roger? For each
sorry.
group?
Sorry, my apologies. My apologies. Okay, councillors.
Oh, do we have any councillors left?
Oh my goodness.
That will mean we're not quorate if we don't. Is Mary still
Mary
here?
Doyle's here.
Mary's still here.
Mary.
Mary, can you hear me? No, she's still in the meeting.
Go for a coffee.
Probably.
Okay, well, let's just take the rest anyway. Faith representatives.
Yeah.
Governors. Sorry.
Teachers.
Teacher representative.
Teachers.
Yeah.
Julia.
Okay, so that's fine, but we don't have a councillor representative. If I try and send her a message directly.
Right, okay.
So you can pick that one up.
Right, okay. Let's take the action plan as far as the end of section 5. I'll try and pick Mary up on this at the end if she appears. Okay, teachers in favour? Okay, faith representatives? Tanya, are you with us?
Tanya is a co-opted member.
Co-opted members are not able to vote.
Yeah, apologies, yeah. Okay, so we'll wait for Mary on that, otherwise it's all in place there. Okay, I think we can do. Right. Very, very quickly, Phil, can you just give us a quick verbal, we'll come back to Mary hopefully, but can you just give us a quick verbal update from yesterday, 23rd meeting of WSACA?
Yeah, it took place on the 23rd of March, a couple of days ago, and Tanya and Colette were in attendance as well, so if they want to chip in, feel free. The agenda covered so there is a qualifications Wales consultation looking at what the qualifications might look like in 2025 for awarding in 2027. So we're talking quite a few years away, but for pupils in year 10, they would be taught it in 2025, probably to be awarded 2 years later. The Qualifications Wales consultation has made some recommendations regarding, well, all of the areas of the curriculum, including humanities. They want to include a social studies GCSE, the possibility of a social studies GCSE, and the possibility of a humanities GCSE, as well as overhauling what we've already got for religious education. There was an acknowledgement that they felt that the GCSEs were a little bit too difficult for everybody to access, and so that would need to be addressed in the new curriculum, as well as something for statutory religious education, or RVE as it will be then. So that was you can access that by looking at Qualifications Wales website directly yourself, and you can respond to their consultation directly. I spoke to Roger earlier, and in any other business, we will obviously need to provide a response to that qualifications, to that consultation, and I'm hoping that you won't mind if you defer that to myself and Roger. We'll send that out to everybody else so they can have a look at it before we send that. There was.
Stop me there, Phil.
Yeah.
We're all here. Can I just have an agreement on that, please? That's the procedure we're actually doing, because we've got to respond to that fairly quickly. So all those teachers, councillors, faith representatives, unanimous. Okay, let's minute that. We'll proceed on that basis. Sorry, Phil.
Okay. There was a presentation regarding meetings that we've had with Welsh Government as a WSACRE have had with Welsh Government. It was very, very, very comprehensive. I don't know what the other two thought, but there was meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting about this, about that, about the other. And the chair of WSACRE, Rachel Samuelson, went through all of the meetings they've had in the last sort of 12 months or so, and it has been very, very substantial. Libby took us through the RE framework, the supporting framework that we've already discussed, and also about the professional learning, which I've discussed in the last point. There was a presentation about the curriculum bill and how it's made its way from sort of an idea through to actual being law. That was a NAPFRE presentation, which again was very interesting, looking at the way that it's made its way through the Senedd. That was about it, really. There were updates from sort of other RE sort of stakeholders, but I don't think there's anything else to report. The minutes will be available when they are released for anybody to have a look through in any great detail.
Okay. Colette, Tanya, do you want to add anything?
No, that's great. Thanks, Phil.
Great. Okay, thanks for that, Phil. Okay. I'm going to defer the date of the next meeting to a consultation, because I think it's really important that Lowry comes to these meetings. It's made such a big difference, and to get her here is important. So I think she's not here now. So rather than try and decide on an arbitrary date now, can you leave it for us to consult with Lowry to get a date and then get back to you? Yeah. Yeah, I'm getting nods everywhere on that one. Okay. Mary, you disappeared. We thought you might disappear for a coffee, but we had importantly had a vote while you were away, and it doesn't become a substantive vote unless you're incorporated as the councillor representative. So first of all, on the invitation to the humanities representatives to come and share with us, would you support that? So that's completely unanimous and agreed, Sally. And the first 5 sections of the action plan, which we're stopping at this point because we've lost 2 of our key members.
Can I just confirm that, Phil? So we're agreeing the first 5 sections of the action plan, is that right?
Yes, that's
Yeah,
right. That's what
okay.
I'm proposing now, and I'm asking Mary to vote. Yes. Yes, and Mary's saying yes. So all the first 5 sections of the action plan have actually been agreed. Okay. Well, it was quite a challenge to get through a lot of this, but I feel really encouraged by the progress that we're actually making. So, and it really does feel we're talking about, you know, what happens, ultimately what happens on the ground as well, which is what this is really all about. So before we leave, thanks for everybody for attending. We look forward to you being here next time. And perhaps we could encourage, particularly, I know they're very busy at the moment, but given the teacher network, teacher attendance at the next meeting could be really important. And we can, they will obviously get the minutes of this meeting and what's been decided, and can see how there are opportunities for them to be involved within that. Okay, any other comments before we finish? Okay. Well, that woof of encouragement.
Sorry, there's some dogs on the beach here with me.
Yeah, get your tequila out now. Wait till we've all gone. All right, thanks very much, everybody. We'll see you next time. Phil, if you'll stay on, that'd be helpful. Take care.